After the amazing blockbuster release of Black Ops 1 in 2010, Treyarch Studios was presented with the impossible task that every studio and developer fears: making sequels. In today's video, we will go over details of early and cut content for the Black Ops 2 multiplayer, from game modes that never saw the light of day to kill streaks that ended up being used in future games. If you're interested in the maps of the multiplayer, that'll be discussed in the next episode. It's alleged that development for Black Ops 2 began early 2011. Though an exact month can't be given, it's believed based on some details that it started between January or February of 2011. From the very beginning, it was made clear that this story would have player-based impacts, and the setting was originally conceptualized to take place in the year of 2020 instead of 2025 like we got on release. Let's get into it. There are various weapons that were considered but did not make the cut. For this video, we won't cover any weapons featured in various developer builds because those are already well documented and have been discussed. The only weapons I'll discuss today are the Javelin and the XM25. Both weapons were from Modern Warfare 3. The XM25 is already well known, but it was added sometime in September of 2011. Was noted to be cut sometime later that month, but it does appear in the Greenlight build of November 2011. This seemed like an interesting discrepancy that I would mention. The Javelin was going to make a return from Modern Warfare 3, but it appears to have gotten cut early on. The future rendition was going to disperse its projectile into 3 projectiles before reaching its target. This would have been pretty awesome to see, but at the time it kind of makes sense. It would be hard to futurize the Javelin. And for attachments, there are some very interesting details that didn't make release. There are a number of attachments from Black Ops 1 that were considered for Black Ops 2 but got cut. So here are the interesting ones I thought I'd mention. The millimeter scanner sight was originally attached to the side of your gun, and it looked the same as a heartbeat sensor. It would have been a constant scan, and the more stationary that the enemy was, the clearer the image of them would become. So if you walked, you were kind of a faint figure. If you ran, you were practically unseen. If you're familiar with Treyarch under Vonderhaar's leadership, it's kinda clear that camping in their games was a form of play that was frowned upon. And we'll see some details later in this video that back that claim. The target finder was originally named Rangefinder. And lastly, speaking of target finders, early in development there were mock-ups for a sight that would highlight enemies for kill streaks. If you played any of the modern Battlefield games, this would be similar to, say, the SOFLAM that the Recon players can use. Obviously, this would barely get used for a COD setting, and they probably determined that sometime in development. For grenades and equipment, everything's pretty standard, but here are some highlights. The camera spike and Nova Gas did carry over to some early form of Black Ops 2, but it can be assumed that they didn't fit the aesthetic that Black Ops 2 had formed. The proximity grenade was originally going to stick to surfaces and would remain where you placed them. And then there would be a direction cone on the minimap on where it was facing. And if an enemy entered that cone, they would then become a red dot on the minimap and an alarm would go off. In this category, we'll go over kill streaks that were renamed, cut, or never made it past the concept stage. If you believe Black Ops 2 had way too many lethal kill streaks compared to supportive ones, you're not wrong. It appears as though developers struggled on what streaks they could create that didn't kill. This information isn't scarce, but here are some of the original names of kill streaks that we later got. The counter UAV was originally named Global Jammer. The Guardian was originally HPM, or High Powered Microwave. The Dragonfire was also originally called the Shrike. The Lodestar was originally the X-47 Pegasus, and the Swarm was originally called Switchblade. A duffel bag was an idea at one point. This was likely some sort of attachment you could add to your class that would let you carry more ammo, as seen in the green light build. And remember the K9 companion from COD Ghost? I'm sure a lot of you really do. Well, it was actually conceptualized for Black Ops 2, and it was much more interesting than what Ghost ended up with. So in Black Ops 2, the K9 companion, when called in, would find you, but once it reached you, it would then hunt around the map by itself, looking for players. It's unclear when the K9 companion was removed, but they likely just gave it over to Infinity Ward. The AGR very early on was named Talon Assault. It was also modeled after the assault drone in Modern Warfare 3. It appears there would have been more than one AGR when you called them in, and they also had trophy systems. There was a concept and testing of a dual weapon sentry gun, but it also got cut. There was a planned Osprey gunner, and players could use as a spawn point. This was likely turned into the VTOL warship that we have today, as it resembles an Osprey, and the VTOL itself also has multiple firing modes. The SAM battery from Black Ops 1 was considered and functioning, but it got cut sometime after. The advanced UAV was originally going to be brought back as a satellite recon, but it was also cut early in development. The escort drone was originally called Eagle Overwatch. This was probably a temporary name from Modern Warfare 3, but it appears it originally had a AI sniper that would fly above the player. But this was likely transferred over to Ghost and became the Helo Scout that we know of today. For game modes, there are so many details that I'm going to have to split the game modes into 3 categories. Normal game modes that we saw upon release, cut game modes that never made it but were present in older builds, and new game modes that never made it past the concept stage or we don't have any footage or knowledge of. Let's begin. For the normal game modes, we have King of the Hill, which was an early name for what would become Hardpoint. The only difference in this early iteration is that there were going to be 3 zones instead of the 4 to 5 that we got on release. Round-based, one life free-for-all, and team deathmatch were considered to be official game modes, but they got cut at some point. However, you can still play these if you tweak the settings in Private Match. And for cut game modes, these are, again, game modes that were considered but didn't make it onto release. So to address the elephant in the room, if you're wondering why the hacker game mode was cut so late, then you're in luck, because it turns out they had a lot of back and forth on trying to get this game mode to work. And for some reason, they had a very strong will to just try to make this game mode work. I don't know why. So it turns out there were 3 playtests done before E3 of 2012. Of these tests, it was mentioned that there was a lack of gunplay. The AGRs were too random and overpowered, and this can be seen in the November 2011 build. There were also a lot of considerations for what could be improved, but to summarize a lot of back and forth, it basically came down to trying to balance the AGR versus the player and how to keep the players engaged. It ultimately ended up getting cut due to issues with the AGR, which kind of makes sense because the game at this point was 6 months away from release, and they would have had to have reworked the entire AGR AI for just one game mode, which isn't really worth it. Drop Zone from Modern Warfare 3 was so far in development that it had custom settings, such as a score cap of 200. There were also some settings and advanced settings, but it appears it got cut early in development. But it was tested in Black Ops 1, but it never gained any traction after 2012. If you ever wondered why Treyarch never had Infected under Vonderhaar's leadership, turns out the reason why it was cut was because, and I quote, "This mode boils down to having the camp to be successful." And it's a shame we didn't get to see Infected appear in Black Ops 1, 2. Old School from COD 4 was considered to make a return, but it ultimately got cut. And for those that don't know what old school is, basically everyone spawns in with the same pistol and SMG, but you have no perks. But throughout the map, there were points of interest that had additional perks and some better weapons. This would have been amazing to see return, and what better game to revive it than Black Ops 2, as it would have introduced a ton of new players to the mode. Resistance is a game mode that has appeared in a number of COD games, but it's unclear what it actually was all these years. Turns out, Resistance is basically the war mode that we know of today in COD World War II and Modern Warfare 19. It would have introduced building defenses and defending areas, as you already know with war, but seeing this in a 7th generation COD game would have been way too ambitious, so it was probably one of those modes that they just kept on the back burner until they could finally develop it with better technology. Team Defender from Modern Warfare 3 was considered, but Vonderhaar decided that Hardpoint was better because it kept everyone in the action and they could all actively contribute to winning or losing. Whereas with Team Defender, you have to follow the flag carrier who's constantly running away from the action. So thanks to Vonderhaar and Team Defender, I think Hardpoint was born. All or Nothing from Modern Warfare 3 was considered, but it also got cut. I believe this is because it's kind of a little similar or parallel to One in the Chamber, but make of that as you will. For new game modes, there are a ton conceptualized but never made it so far as we know. So Sniper Montage was going to be a snipers only game mode, and it would have been team based or free for all, and you would have preset classes. Obviously we never got it, but it would be later featured in Advanced Warfare under the name One Shot. Rocket Pistol Shotgun was also another mode considered. As the name says, you have a rocket or a pistol or a shotgun, and if you were camping after a certain amount of time, you would explode. It's unclear if this would have ever worked. We tried playing this on stream, but it was kind of boring, so I see why it was cut. Freeze Tag was a round-based mode where once you reached 0 health, you would freeze. And then if everyone was frozen, the other team won. And to get unfrozen, your teammate would need to stand by you for a couple of seconds. There are some custom settings that indicate a thaw time and an auto thaw time to unfreeze. Believe it or not, Michael Myers was considered to be an official game mode. I'm not making this up. Not much is clear about this mode other than it would have been obviously knife based, but there was also a game mode called Juggernaut. It was basically one person versus everyone else. The Juggernaut would have 500 health, and whoever killed the Juggernaut would then also become the Juggernaut. Arena was supposed to be a 1v1 game mode. Now, it appears Treyarch was going to innovate and step up what Infinity Ward made with Face Off. For Arena, it would have taken place on small maps and only the winner could keep playing. It was probably cut due to the lack of time they had to make smaller maps and probably having to make a matchmaking system that prevented you from playing if you lost. There was a Vampire and Team Vampire game mode. Long story short, it's basically team deathmatch, but you all have 300 health, and the more people you killed, the more health you received. This mode kinda sounds atrocious, so it's kinda good that we maybe never saw that. Lockdown was a defense game mode that worked pretty similar to Hardpoint, but the defenders have to stay in their zone. The defenders would start out with 300 health and their weapon would upgrade after so many kills. And you could only score points if all of the living defenders were in the objective. There's also a mode called Bot Wars, not to be confused with Hacker. This mode would have played like Domination, but it was just you versus 3 other players. And there were 4 flags on the map, and each flag had a bot. And once you captured the flag, the bot would then become your teammate and defend that flag. You could also earn score and XP from the bot. Drone Control, or Sabotage 2.0, as it was called, was a mode that seems to be a very early version of Safeguard. So with Black Ops 2's version, the robot was instead a bomb carrier. There were 2 bomb carriers in the middle of the map, and it appears that both teams fought to escort them. And instead of the robot reaching the enemy objective and just ending the round like it does in Black Ops 3, in Black Ops 2 it would instead explode upon reaching. Purgatory, or also known as Dodgeball, seems to be a game mode that gets found in every COD game, but for Black Ops 2, it appears that Purgatory was round based, and once players were killed, they got revived when an enemy was killed. You obviously win by killing the entire team. My personal opinion is that this mode was probably what inspired Search and Rescue from COD Ghost. And speaking of COD Ghost, Hunted was actually planned for Black Ops 2. And you can even play it in some dev builds. If you don't know, Hunted is a mode where everyone spawns with a knife and you get guns and streaks from timed care packages. And in some early iterations, this mode was called Care Package Games, or as you can tell, Hunger Games. This would have been pretty cool to see in a Black Ops 2 setting, and it's a shame we didn't get to see that. And Capture the Leader from Gears of War was considered for Black Ops 2. It would have been a round-based game mode where both teams take turns defending a single person. This mode is basically what we got later in Cold War and Black Ops 6. I believe it's called High Value Target. And finally, Headhunter from Halo Reach was considered for Black Ops 2, but it got pushed into COD Ghost, where you basically collect dog tags from kills or skulls, as in Halo, and you bring them back to your base to redeem it for score. And if you died, you dropped all your tags, but obviously you guys know this mode if you play Ghost. Based on the date for this mode, it would have almost been released with the one flag capture that we got in summer 2013 of Black Ops 2. For this category, these are some overall things that I couldn't really fit. And have you ever noticed how SMGs and pistols could snipe you across the map in older COD games? So in every COD before Black Ops 2, there were only 2 damage values, close and far. However, Vonderhaar sought to upgrade this system and change it to have more ranges of damage. This ended up making the weapons kind of feel more smooth and realistic. They at one point did plan on you being able to share classes and emblems. They were going to add final kill cams to theater mode, but it appears they didn't make it in time. And lastly, sleight of hand was considered, but the dual mag attachment replaced that. And if you're curious about any perks, most of the perks carry over from previous games, so there's that. And that's going to be everything found so far for the Black Ops 2 multiplayer. Overall, key takeaway from this, I think, is there seems to be a lot of overlap between the studios. Having the games released annually often means new ideas don't get put into action until a couple of years later. And then it might not even be the same studio that originally created that idea. In the next video, we'll cover all of the base multiplayer maps in varying stages and comparing them to their release counterparts. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, consider dropping a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.